There we go. So now welcome everybody. I'll be sharing my screen and we will get this show on the road. So thank you so much for joining. Assalamu alaikum. We're with the American Muslim Community Foundation. Today we're having our Social Impact Accelerator Mastermind session for March. How to diversify our funding. This will be a conversation with Madiha, Patel, and Zahra, Bokhari, Hassan, our amazing leadership circle members on the hot seat. Today's brief agenda is welcome, intros, upcoming events, speaker information, the presentation, Q&A, and then a brief survey, which we'd love you to fill out. So just a little bit about AMCF. Our vision is leading sustainable and strategic Muslim philanthropy for today and future generations. The mission is cultivating donor giving and diversifying funding to advance charitable causes. Our core values are sacred, strategic, sustainable, collaborative, diverse, inclusive, and integrity. AMCF core programs for donors and nonprofits includes donor advised funds, giving circles, endowments, and leadership development. AMCF impact from 2016 when we were established to today, 22 million has been distributed to 900 nonprofits worldwide. We have $2 million assets under management, 229 donor advised funds, and 29 endowments, and 1 women's giving circle. We do have a nonprofit resource center, so I encourage you to check it out, a curated list of resources for nonprofits. We also have AMCF Ramadan. I know it's almost to the end, but we still have a couple days left. And it's a great resource for on giving for families and children. We also have an upcoming National Muslim Endowment Council on April 10th. If that's something you're interested in, it is open to the public. Then we have the Muslim Women's Giving Circle, which we're part of. Yay. Our purpose is to harness the power of American Muslim women through collective giving, combine and democratize our giving, amplify women-focused nonprofits, support Muslim women in leadership, provide seamless donations to organizations chosen by our members. And how it works, it's very simple. You join as a member with a donation of $5 or more, become a voting member with a donation of $35 a month or $420 a year. We're in the 2025 Giving Circle cycle right now. At the end of each cycle, which is about a year long, members can nominate an eligible organization for funding with preference for nonprofits serving or led by American Muslim women. And then voting members can determine the finalists and the top organizations that will be funded. And the impact for the Women's Giving Circle is $41,000 has been collectively raised and distributed to 6 nonprofits in 4 years. A huge shout out to our generous members. This is all collective giving, collective money raised, and collectively distributed, everything by members. These are 3 grantees in the 2024 Giving Circle cycle. Muslim Legal Fund of America, $7,500. Olive Community Services, serving elders in our community at $4,500. And Pillars of Peace, they have a domestic violence shelter in New York City. They received $3,000 last year. So we're very happy, honored to have them as our nominees and to be able to give them grants last year, unrestricted funds. And then this Ramadan, a few more days left. So if you have not yet joined or donated, we would love for you to help us reach our $1,000 donation match for Ramadan. We have received about 500 donations, so 500 to go. Just really to support giving with purpose, supporting American Muslim women leaders. So love for you to join. And then a few upcoming programs for the Women's Giving Circle. In April, we are honored to be working with MLFA to do 2 webinars on compliance for nonprofits. The first one will be Wednesday, April 16th, focusing on nonprofits and national security laws. And the second will be Wednesday, April 23rd, the basics of nonprofit compliance, with the attorneys from their team hosting or doing this workshop. So very happy to have that. In the month, we will be having a members-only salon for Giving Circle members to do professional networking, mentorship opportunities, and have a supportive environment. So love for you to join. Sorry. So we encourage you to learn more and join the 25 Giving Circle cycle. Follow us on social media. Sorry. And to learn more. So welcome to our speakers. Shazine, if you want to read their bios.
Yes. Madiha Patel, a member of our leadership circle. Madiha provides grant writing services, and communication strategies to community-based nonprofits. She earned her MA in Writing, Rhetoric, and Technical Communications from James Madison University, her BA in International Studies and Religious Studies from Towson University. Oh, sorry. And is currently a PhD student in Technical Communications and Rhetoric at Texas Tech University. Her diverse academic and professional experience in peace building efforts, human rights, and community building are key to her work in supporting nonprofits serving marginalized and underrepresented communities. Welcome, Madiha and Zahra Bokhari Hassan. A member of our leadership circle, Zahra brings over 15 years of dedicated experience in the philanthropic sector, specializing in strategic fundraising to support mission-driven organizations. In her current role at Candid, Zahra builds vital relationships with institutional funders to secure the resources that empower nonprofits with data, tools, and training. Previously, she provided fundraising expertise as a consultant for the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists and the World Food Program, USA, and served as a program associate at the Greater Washington Community Foundation. She holds an MPA in Human Rights and Humanitarian Policy from Columbia University and a BA in Economics and Mathematics from NYU. Zahra's diverse experience highlights her commitment to advancing meaningful causes through strategic fundraising. Welcome, Zahra. So our topic today is a mastermind session on how do we diversify funding. And with that, do I hand it over? We just wanted to go over our session. We have norms and the topic is how do we diversify funding? And we have an open discussion led by the hot seat guests, and then we'll have final thoughts and our takeaway, and we'll try to leave with 1 to 2 action items at the end of our session. Okay, our norms are that we want to have respect for all. We want to be open to new ideas, and we want to make sure one person goes at a time. We want to be kind and honest, and we want to have a space to learn and share with one another. And with that, we'll hand it over to our 2 members in our hot seat today. Zahra and Madiha, take it away.
Zahra, you want to start?
Sure, I can get us started. Thank you very much for the introductions. So as you know, I do a lot of fundraising, so I think about this all the time. And I guess where you sit, which organization you sit at really depends on really makes a difference for where you're going to go for your fundraising. So in my current role, a lot of our fundraising is institutional because we don't pull on heartstrings. And so it's hard to get individual donors or, other or like DAPs, for example, to invest in our work because we're serving nonprofits, but we're not serving them directly. And so you need to think strategically about who your message is going to resonate with. So I've done a bunch of research on where to get funding. I mean, there's all the places. Now it's harder to get government grants, but there's government grants, there's individual gifts, you can charge program service fees, you can reach out to high net worth individuals. That's something that we're exploring right now. Corporations, which are typically very hard to get money from, foundations, and then there's also investment income. So the 2 things that we are working on are essentially the majority of our revenue actually comes from earned revenue. And then we also have a very robust foundation giving arm, but we're exploring high net worth individuals because so much of the work that we do is tech focused. But we've explored individual giving, hasn't really worked, and that's not something we put a lot of effort into because we know it's a hard sell. I wouldn't ask any of you to donate to Candid because I know that it's not directly it's indirectly serving or things that you care about. And so I'd love to pick your brains on what are the strategies that you've used when figuring out where to look for funding, what areas are like your focus areas for the organizations you work with, and maybe that'll give us all some ideas of like how to branch out of the things that we're working on.
Yeah, again, thank you for all the introductions, Shazine and Lisa, and so glad to be here and part of this conversation. And you always hear, building upon what Zahra is saying, there's so many different ways to diversifying your revenue streams, right? For whatever nonprofit organization that you are working for. But not every type of avenue works for your nonprofit, and that's very important, right? So before just jumping into it and saying, okay, we're going to try fundraising is one of the most popular ones, of course, but we're going to give it our all with applying to different foundations or we're going to crowdfund. It shouldn't be that you go first in terms of trying those out. My recommendation is look at your organization, look at your environment, look at the community that you are placed in, your nonprofit organization is placed in. And then based on that, doing so like an analysis, right? Of what are the giving patterns? What are sort of the socioeconomic realities of the people that you're serving and the kinds of programs that you're offering, and then building a plan based on that. Maybe I'll rewind a little bit. So I've worked for different types of nonprofit organizations, but they've been based in community, right? So a lot of community-based nonprofit organizations. And currently I serve as a head of grants at Islamic Society of Baltimore, which is a mosque located out on the East Coast. They have a very large congregation, and they provide several different types of social services to the local community, both Muslim community as well. It's open to those who are residing within the neighborhood that the organization is housed in. And so keeping that in mind, with the programs that they offer and the services that they offer, that I will seek out grants that will benefit wide variety of population, right? So when I think of, for example, aging population, it benefits both the Muslim community that comes to ISB as well as the non-Muslim community that also comes to ISB, looking to participate in different types of program that the senior center will provide over there. And then based on that, I go and seek out, I research grants. Okay, what types of opportunities are there from a private giving perspective as well as governmental, right? And then of course there's donations that are encouraged as well too. So and that's how I'll approach my grant seeking. And yeah, so that's one of the ways. And if there's any questions, I can continue ranting on. Please do pause and drop any questions in the chat room as well if you cannot open your mic. But sorry, I'll kind of pause over there and you want to.
I think another thing that a lot of people I was interviewing someone one time we were talking about diversifying fundraising. It was for a fundraising position, and they were just so excited about events. And I was like, well, that's not really a good fit for us because like, who are we inviting to these events? But they were so excited about it. But like, it just reminded me that not everything is going to be a good fit for your organization, like not every type of fundraising. And so for community groups, maybe that is a really great way of raising money because you're like gathering people and you're able to come together as a community and see the impact in real life and in real time. But for a data tech nonprofit, that's not quite something that we can do because we're not showcasing that same community building aspect of it.
Absolutely. No, I agree with that. And I think similar to, so for a community based nonprofit, that would work great, right? Because you're bringing people together and you're building an energy. And when people are together, they give, right? The giving patterns and behaviors look a little bit different. And then they see, oh, okay, I can see now how my giving is going to benefit this community. We're going to have an opportunity to get together and converse, spend time. So that yields more giving from that perspective. And then you also, for when it comes to grants, you document that, and then you show show that in your proposal to whichever funder that you're submitting, like, hey, listen, we had these events, we had this much attendance, these are some of the feedback that we received from the attendees, and that builds a case for like, okay, we're doing something important in this community, and the funders will be more, it will be appealing to the funders to be like, okay, we would like to fund this program or this project.
I have a question. How do you know if you're a completely new organization, right? Where do you start? Do you figure out, if you have no donor base, right? You have a good idea, you have friends, you have family, but not much else. What would you recommend as a starting point for a newer nonprofit that's just getting going, or kind of branching out? Maybe they've done a little bit of, they have volunteers that do good work, but they're looking to do their first fundraising. Where would you start?
I'm going to assume you're talking about like a nonprofit that's doing work in a local community where like they would maybe be able to visibly show the impact of the work that they're doing. And so maybe I would try to like come up with some talking points and give them to those friends and family so they can then go out and talk to people about it, because like word to, like, what's it called? Peer-to-peer marketing is very helpful. Maybe you don't have a website. Maybe you spin up an Instagram or something so that you can showcase things, but you don't necessarily have to have a website to be able to show it. I think just like getting people excited about it is the first step, and then being able for them to be able to talk about it is going to help you get the word out.
Absolutely. And building upon Zahra, what you're saying is it comes down to, again, who your sort of audience is and what service or what are you going to be providing, because not everyone, they might think that your cause is nice and important, but it might not resonate with them, right? So being mindful of that as well too. So you want to tailor your message in a way that reaches out to people where you can garner interest, but also you're going to the right peers and individuals that will further advance your message, if that makes a little bit sense. Because the other issue is that we don't want that sort of marketing to die off within the first circle, right? If does not resonate with them. So I think when you are also, so it's equally important to also reaching out to doing again a little research on like, well, what sorts of other nonprofit organizations or individuals that are out there, doing a keyword search, whether it's on LinkedIn, different search engines, and then having your message tailored and then sending it out to those individuals. So being very strategic in who you're asking and talking about your cause too. I think that's time well spent in trying to build an audience, right? Like who you can speak to and kind of hook on and build upon your ask.
There is
And
a
I think
question.
building some partnerships with other nonprofits that are doing similar work, or learning from how they've fundraised to see like, are they getting money from individuals or are they getting grant funding, and should I be applying for that grant funding? And just like not cheating necessarily,
Yeah.
but like just exploring to see what else is out there.
Okay, so that definitely gets me a little bit energized. What I have seen is that, at least within the Muslim community, there needs to be more partnership that needs to take place, working together and collaborating, right? It's not that there's only limited amount out there, and if we get it, it's like this moving away from competition mindset to be like collaborative mindset. And there are definitely even programs out there where you can collaborate together and get larger funding, right? And or maybe small, but then you start off using that as a stepstone to getting something larger. You pilot some program or project together with one or two other organizations, and then you build upon that, because once you're able to show that you can do this program successfully, and then going from there. But yeah, I 100% agree. I don't see enough collaboration and partnership between nonprofit organizations that work towards similar or their causes have overlap. And that's an area that that needs some more attention or some more advancement. Yeah.
And maybe they also complement each other. So it's like someone comes to you for one thing, and then you can send them forward to another nonprofit to help service a different need. And so it would be really great if more nonprofits were talking to each other and creating that like stream so that there's like wraparound services for people.
Can I ask you a follow-up on that? Because I love the collaboration idea and partnering. And it's something that AMCF is going to engage a little more deeply with our members. So what have you seen that have been like successful collaborations in your experience? Like if we were to connect, you know what I mean? Because we try to connect, but if we're connecting for collaboration, especially around funding, what successful models have you seen that, you know, we might be able to replicate to help, you know, our members to, you know, develop collaborations for funding?
Well, so a very recent example is we collect data and information, and there's another nonprofit that does very similar work for a different part of the nonprofit sector. And like, given all the changes happening in the sector right now and the shrinking of funding, we're both like rapidly trying to come out with research, and we like chatted with each other and realized we're both trying to come out with similar research, but like addressing two different parts of the social sector. And so instead of trying to create something that we're not experts in, we collaborated and created a research report that covers all aspects of the social sector using both of our data sets. And so instead of like competing for an audience, we're like collaborating together to share information that we have in a more cohesive way. And that way, all that information is accurate and we're not guessing about things we don't know, and using our combined expertise.
Thank you.
There was a comment in the question in the chat from Amira. She's saying our team is exploring expanding our donor base and acquiring both federal private grants. What are some good metrics for what success looks like specifically for the grants? What's a good number of grants a nonprofit should apply to annually? And what's a good number of percentage that we should aim to be selected? We were thinking of 1 out of 3, but not sure if that's too low. So thoughts?
I can go with that. Okay, so so going back to knowing your community, knowing your work, the kind of work that you do, what impact it makes, should be should determine how you're going to approach grant funding, right? This is going to be my hot take. Treating grants as like, oh, we have to apply to 7. We just, you know, like, as it's a numbers game, but not necessarily all the time. You need to kind of adapt to looking at what's going on. So for example, if you're a new nonprofit or a new organization and you really want to invest more time in getting to know people, getting to know the different kind of funding agencies that are out there, both private and governmental, before you just start applying. So, right, making those phone calls, emails. There, believe it or not, there's still some governmental agencies that are much more better to reach through phone, like, and or meeting them at some community events and talking about your programming, what you're trying to do, versus just sending an application. You want to show them who you are, you exist, what kind of work you want to do. And then from there, you think about like, okay, this is how I'm going to develop my proposal. This is how I'm going to develop my ask, so to speak. And then building it from there. So more time needs to be spent in building relationships than towards grants when you're starting off, right? And then once you've started off, you've secured 1 or 2, and start small. it feels like it's nothing, but that getting that first 500 grant or even $1,000 grant, it's huge. And then showing that you are able to administer it and execute from start to finish, with compliance and everything, it signals that you're credible, and then you have the ability to use the funding properly, and then go from there, then increase your amount. And I think that's going to yield some, it's going to be moving in a certain direction, and it takes time. That's the other part too. It does take time. So what does happen sometimes is that you'll say, okay, we have a goal of applying to 10 in the first quarter or the first half of the year. And then if you receive all rejections, it can be a little demoralizing or de-energizing. And you don't, you want to avoid that, right? Like that de-energizing part, because then you're not going to say, well, no one likes us, or, your strategy is not going to be as effective. So yeah, Zahra.
I'm going to plus one all the things you said, because I think networking is so important, regardless of the size of your organization. So often it comes down to who you know, even if it's like who you know at, whether it's like, individuals or at big foundations, just like getting in the door is really hard. So and it's definitely a numbers game. I did see somewhere just today that it's 1 in 3 nonprofits get funded. I would guess it's fewer. I mean, I don't know. I haven't done the research, but anecdotally, I would assume that it's like 1 in 10 or something. And so I think it's hard to put a number on like what's a good number to apply to. It depends on what your budget is. It depends on what your capacity is. Not everyone has full-time dedicated grants people. And so I would keep all of that in mind when you're trying to figure out how many to apply to and what your other revenue sources look like.
Absolutely, because you should be speaking to those other revenue avenues. That word's kind of confused. Revenue avenues that are going to be supplemental to your grants, right? So grants are not supposed to be. What happens oftentimes is that people will approach like, okay, I have 5K, so I have to make sure I execute this program within that 5K. That's not how you should be approaching it. You should have a second stream of whether it's like in-kind donations or volunteers that you can account for, or personal or like one-to-one match, so to speak. So multiple different things that are going to supplement your grant funding that you're asking for. That also strengthens your ask as well, because now it shows to your funder that you have some backing. There are people who are willing to spend and invest to your project or your program. Yeah.
So just a shameless plug for the Women's Giving Circle. Don't forget, if you become a member, you can nominate a nonprofit. So you can nominate your own nonprofit. So Mira, become a member and you can nominate MSA National. And if you're a voting member, you can vote for MSA National. So like, or whatever nonprofit you like, just remember that. It's not a ton of money, but it's money and unrestricted funds, which, as we all know, is not hard to get. It is hard to get, right?
And I'll chime in on that. Grapevine lists lots of giving circles. So I encourage people, I know it's how people give to us and get to know us, but there's also a directory of different giving circles that maybe people can apply for. And that might be an easier in and test out, your case statement, your ask, and things like that as you're preparing for a larger grant that you might be applying for. On that, I'll have a follow-up question. If you're a nonprofit, and I hear from different nonprofits about this all the time, that they're applying for grants and they're not getting them. What wisdom do you have if people are in that boat, and what should they do if they're not getting grants? What is the feedback from that, and what would their next steps be?
Well, to start us off, I would reach out to, if they like got an email or something, I would reach back out and say, thank you so much for letting me know. Is there something in my proposal that you can flag for me that like I can work on and improve on? Or like, was there something you had more questions about that I can fix for future grant applications, and just like opening the door to have that conversation with the funder is really helpful, because a lot of times they won't reply, but other times someone might respond and say, actually, yes, and have a meeting with you and share some really helpful things. Another thing is having someone else look at your grant application, because so many times we've like read these things 500 times and are blind to things that, are in there that are glaringly wrong, or just like, we just published an article where one of my coworkers interviewed me about like, what was your biggest mistake as a new fundraiser? And mine was that I would just like be all excited about the things that we were doing, and I would just like throw everything at the grant application. And I really have to learn to tailor my messaging. And so just like looking at what you're submitting to see, is this speaking to the audience that I intend for it to speak to? Or like, am I oversharing, or am I pivoting in the wrong direction? And like, they care about education, so I should only talk about those programs instead of like all the other cool things that we do.
100%, 100%. And more internally speaking, it might be a really good time to kind of take a look and evaluate what exactly are you offering? It's just one of those really bitter truths. Not everyone, sometimes your cause might just not resonate with with your audience to where they're willing to invest in you, right? They enjoy it, they like it, but maybe just not enough, right? So then once you acknowledge that and accept it, that's where you can move, work. Okay, what do I do now? What are the needs of my audience? What exactly is going to, so doing that market analysis, so to speak, but you want to again tailor it more like one-on-one or more smaller focus groups or conversations, like what, just asking very straight up, what would make you want to, in terms of the audience, what would resonate with you? What kinds of programs or services would we provide that would work for you? And then kind of, improving your offerings based on that, or, revising your offerings on that, and then going from there. And then on at the same time, it's also important to see what are sort of the trends, right? The funding trends, whether from a local perspective, local agencies and state agencies usually have overlap in what they're trying to fund, but then at the federal level, right, that might look really different. So past few years, it's been environmental stewardship work has been one of the top trends. And then, so there's been a lot of funding that has come down the pipeline, both at the federal level and at the state and local level. So sometimes it's not a priority for those agencies, so you're not going to see it. And that's where you're going to have to pivot a little bit and look at more private donations or leverage some relationships based on that. And then, go do more of your grant writing, proposal writing from there. Sophia has her hand.
Yeah, is it appropriate to ask questions now, or?
Yeah, of course.
Thank you so much for this space. I've been really curious to learn more about the Muslim Women Giving Circle, and I'm just really happy for the opportunity to meet with you and just to also learn about your leadership and perspectives. I wanted to offer to Amira to I really recommend to invest in that infrastructure, because it's a lot like what Zahra and Madiha were talking about, all these different layers of relationships, and especially if you have a team and different people are doing different things. I don't know what, even with individual donors, there's a whole platforms where you're managing all of those, all the parts of those relationships. So I think that infrastructure is really important, and also educating donors how much of the magic is important in the backstage aspect, and how it's really important to invest in that, and that our community organizations deserve strong infrastructure so we can be sustainable and manage these funding relationships. I was a participant in the American Muslim Civic Leadership Institute many years ago, and we were, in my year, we had $5,000 of professional development funds to invest, and I think Candid was the Foundation Center previously, or the name, there's rebrand. So I used a lot of those resources to build my capacity around learning about what is now Candid. I took different trainings to kind of learn how to do research, because it is so much about finding the right fit and the energy, and like when you actually go into the labor and energy to put in that grant application, or how to really focus on your networking efforts, where to invest in those relationships. Zahra, I was wondering if you could also share some about maybe some highlights about how to best utilize Candid for nonprofits, or I know it's changed over time. I've dipped in some. I've gone to the library and asked a librarian who specialized in to help me kind of learn how to navigate. But it's different and changed over time. But I think for folks starting out or wanting to use that tool, it's so valuable. If you could maybe touch on that.
Yeah, sure. I'm always wary of like turning it into a candid ad. But we do have a bunch of, so as of 2023, we actually made all of our trainings free. So except for all but one. But all of our like webinars and stuff are available for free. So I can link you to that. So we have trainings that teach you like how to write a proposal, how to build a budget, how to build a board, how to diversify your board, all kinds of things. And then we also have so we have two databases, which will soon become one, but one is called Foundation Directory. That has all this data on grants, so where foundations are making grants. So that's a great place to explore and do prospect research and see like who's funding what in my area and my interest area. And then we also have GuideStar, where the Candid profiles live. So we encourage all nonprofits to fill out their Candid profile, because that data goes into 200 plus of our data partners. So like it shows up in a bunch of like Fidelity and Vanguard and stuff. All of them are pulling our data into their databases so that their donors can look through those to see where they want to give. It also shows up on like Facebook and Instagram fundraisers and stuff. That's how they verify which nonprofits are 501c3 registered. I'll share links on those, but to be able to access all of that data for free, GuideStar is free. You just create an account and you can search on there. To access the foundation directory for free, we have 1,800 locations across the country, and I'll put a link to how to find one near you, but you can go in there and get free access to the data. And then we also have a promotion for small nonprofits. So if you're a nonprofit under $1 million, if you earn a gold seal of transparency on your Candid profile, you can actually redeem a free year of foundation directory access. So it's a lot of information, and I'll put some links in the chat, but yeah, it's a great resource, and we have excellent trainers who are like, I mean, I've taken some of their trainings, they're phenomenal.
And I'll just attest to that. I also, when I was learning about just the grants world is so vast. Candid has just excellent resources. So definitely take advantage of those.
Thank you.
And Lisa shared in our in the chat, Zahra did an excellent webinar on how to get that gold, get the free membership to the foundation directory. And that's like, if you were to purchase that, that's around $2,000 a year. So it's an excellent resource. And if you go through that webinar, Zahra just guides you through it. And, and I think she even did a thing of pulling up information on, grants to Muslim organizations. So I would highly recommend watching that webinar that Zahra did, and then going from there. So okay, great. Thank you, Zahra, for more stuff. I really appreciate it.
I have a question. First, thank you so much for this amazing webinar. It's so important, such information for nonprofit organizations. But I was very curious to hear about your experience as a fundraiser for Candid. As you said, it's all about numbers and data, and it doesn't pull at the heartstrings. And I think so much of the messaging for nonprofits is like, really need to kind of appeal to people's kind of emotions. So for organizations like that, that doesn't kind of easily translate to kind of heartstrings or emotional attachments with people, how do you kind of structure, or how do you kind of create or build that narrative that makes it compelling for your potential donors or foundations?
So it's hard. One of the things that we try to do is like speak to how many nonprofits we serve in their area. So we try to collect data on like, okay, these are how many people in your, because so many foundations are so local focused, community focused. We're like, okay, there's like 500,000 people in California that are using Candid's resources, and we're a free resource for all of these nonprofits, and we're trying to help them amplify their impact by providing them with these capacity building resources. So I'll look to see which foundations have capacity building grants so that I know that they care about capacity building. We don't fit into that portfolio because they're giving grants to be able to build your capacity, not for capacity building organizations. But I'll reach out to them and try to have a conversation because I know that they care about this work. There's only so many infrastructure funding organizations, and so the way that we try to work around it is like we'll look at education focused nonprofits and then pitch our candid learning stuff and talk to them about how we are training nonprofits to be more effective and well, not equitable necessarily, but we'll talk about how, so like we really look to see what we look at how many nonprofits there are in a certain community, how many have claimed candid profiles, how many have earned a gold seal, and how many are eligible for that free access. And so we really try to speak to the local communities. And then there's some organizations that are very with it and they get it and they understand why it's such a vital resource. Those are much easier to talk to because then we can just talk about our work as a whole. But for those other ones, we really try to like look at our data to see what we have and how we are able to support their local communities. But it's not easy, I will say.
Zahra, can I follow up with that? I'm sorry if I'm manipulating the conversation, but something just came to mind because one of the things we do want to do is gather and disseminate more information about Muslim nonprofits from an AMCF perspective rather than the Giving Circle. Is that something, I mean, what you just said, just kind of like, we've been having conversations, but I don't think we've had the conversation with you. Is that numbers that we could pull from Candid, or Candid would have access to the number of Muslim nonprofits in your database?
I don't think we would be able to filter for that because we collect demographic information, but we don't collect information on religion. That's not one of the demographics that we collect.
I'm just wondering if there's a workaround where if there is something, you know what I mean, like narrow down, not, is that something that, based on maybe what mission is or something that could be pulled? And
Maybe through population served, actually.
yeah, I mean, because you pulled by Muslim grants, right?
That's true, actually, when I did that, yeah, I did filter by Muslim grant.
And not all Muslim organizations are getting grants or whatever, but just from like a starting point where we could, I'm just going to put that like little tidbit out there and see maybe how we can maybe make that happen. And even if there's a cost to it or whatever, maybe we can have further discussions, but we would love to get more, because that's our focus area. If we could get more information on what constitutes a Muslim organization or how we could delineate that, especially like I said, you have the largest collection of, nonprofits out there. And then how could we try to get that information? That would be great.
Now I'm interested. I'm gonna look to see. Send me what kind of numbers you're looking for so that I know how to filter the search and figure out whether we have that information. But now that I'm thinking about it, we do have that population served filter where we would be able to filter for Muslim organizations. Okay, let me play around with it.
Okay. Could it be, I mean, and I'm just wondering if it's an optional field that can be added if people want to identify as that, right? When you're like the information you ask regarding, all the stuff you ask regarding, for your seal of approval or whatever, people want to optionally add in, right, a specific target area, and then we can put information out there like fill out, put Muslim or what, what, I mean, we can do a campaign to say, hey, we want to learn more, go to Candid, and if there's a field, something like that. I'm just, just throwing things out there, like this
Yeah.
is supposed to be brainstorming, so I want to brainstorm for the community.
Yeah, we do have
so-
the population served. Let me look at the filters. But I think maybe there is a way, and I wonder how many people are actually using that to be that specific.
Right. And like I said, if it's informing our nonprofits, right, to go in there, go into their profile and fill out that on the population, and that gets us greater numbers. We're happy to do that campaign if it's going to get us some good numbers and data on our community nonprofits, because it's some conversation we've been having with different data collectors, and like I said, what you just said, just kind of piqued my interest in that. So anyways, I'll let you get back to answering some good
I'll play around with
fundraising questions, but
I'm interested.
we'll leave that thread out there. So, and if other people have ideas on how we can do that, like, I'd love to get the community, knowledge around that, and that groupthink that can help us accomplish that.
And we have about a little under 10 minutes left. So I don't know, Sophia, Amir, anybody else, they have any questions or thoughts or suggestions? Now's the time. Agnes, you too, sorry. Everybody on the call.
Well, y'all think of some questions or thoughts. One plugin I have over in that Shazeen is that I wonder if, because masajids are also nonprofits, but they don't register necessarily under Candid because they're not required to do to submit 990s. So I know like some of the masajids that I work with, they don't submit 990s, so that information, it wouldn't be available through Candid. So I'm trying to, unless if there's a way to also, as part of this campaign or effort, if we were to encourage them to at least create an account with Candid, right? So at least that information is there. They might not get that seal, the gold transparency, right? There's different levels of seals. But at least that, again, we can have a central place where we're gonna, get a good number of all the Muslim nonprofits that are out there.
And actually, I did just go into our profile to see. And so you can select what the population served is for each of your programs. And you can like really dig deep. So you can select Muslim, you can like even dig deeper, and then like Sunni, Shia, Sufist. So like you could really get very granular with that data if you wanted to.
And Sophia, please feel to unmute yourself.
Yeah, my question is relevant to the scope of our conversation. I don't know, even for like Amira, with your question about, I don't know the people power aspect of MSA National, but for me, for example, if I'm in my consulting work, if I'll just go to the library, I've used the individual database from Candid, like at home, like I think I got a subscription in the past. But when I go to the library, it's very accessible, and the librarian somewhat knows how to use the database, but I think there's so much power. I mean, I'm not like a professional researcher. My friends who are, they just kind of go in and know how to like just even knowing how to pull different things. For me, it's even like what words to use as search words. Like I have kind of a certain amount of brain energy to like think about which words unlock what. I'm just like, I just need what I need. And so my question is that for smaller nonprofits who have small and mighty teams or a certain amount of volunteer time where they're like maybe going to the library or trying to find access different aspects of Canva, is there someone on the Canva team, or can folks either book time with Canva librarians, or someone who really, even virtually, who's like a true expert in using all of those tools, where a nonprofit can come in and say, I need these specific things, and someone from Candid can walk someone through that? Because I know, like, I think Candid is one of the most relevant aspects for this topic, because this is how to really, when you're even talking about using that seal of transparency, like there's probably a lot of administrative steps that even go into that. That's like a lot of effort, but just to know exactly what are the 3 steps a nonprofit needs to do so someone doesn't need to go try to find it, do a scavenger hunt. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, we actually have a online librarian system. I'm gonna put the link in the chat. So like you can chat with them, you can email them, and they are so like I don't know how they do it. They just like I guess they are librarians by training. They know how to find the information you need. I reach out to them sometimes where I'm like, I don't know where this is. And like they're so good, or they'll tell you like what search terms to use. They are very well versed in our products. So yeah, I would reach out to them. And then we also have a bunch of like, I know everyone doesn't want to sit through a webinar. We have these like, we're doing this like micro learning thing because we know that people have limited time and short attention spans. And so there's like little snippets that are like under 10-minute videos teaching you how to like fill out your candid profile or other things. So that's all on learning.candid.org. And then we also have like for people who don't want to sit through a video, there's like one pagers that teach you step by step and link to all the things, which the librarians could also link you to if you ask them. But yeah, they respond to like I think they responded to 12,000 nonprofit questions last year. So they respond to a lot of stuff. So reach out to them. They're great.
Thank you. And so also with that as well, if I emailed them and said, I have this kind of scenario, like, can you curate a list of the 5 trainings that I need to watch as my first step? Or is that like more like consulting aspect? Because for me, it's about like, even if everything's there, and I saw you had like an inclusion, like I have ADHD, like I kind of have my own way of organizing information where if I speak to someone verbally, I just want to know exactly what I need. So I don't get in sensory overload of the 1,000 options. And then I'm like done after 3 short webinars, you know what I mean? And then I'm not actually getting to the action step. So I just think that would be most helpful if people have limited energy and because there's energy in the learning edge too. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I don't know if they've gotten that question, but I would ask it. There's no harm in asking them. They might be able to curate a playlist for you for what content is most relevant.
Thanks.
That seems like a great idea.
Maybe ChatGPT can help you too.
Well, I just wanted to thank everybody. If you have a final question, otherwise you just want to wrap it up. Sophia, Amir, do you, or anybody here have a final thoughts or words? Have something, I hope everybody has something to do over the next few weeks that they can take home or take back to work, inshallah. Maybe a
have a
thumbs up
final
if you have something.
question. I just have a final question just on that last point about ChatGPT. I've heard that some funders are actually kind of resisting the use of AI in their grant applications, or that they look upon it as, well, you're not being genuine, or this is even, is this even real? Or there's a lot of resistance to using AI in grant applications, I've heard. Is that the case? And because I can imagine that is a very helpful tool, in terms of summarizing your work or crafting a good message. What do you guys think?
I've seen, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I've seen both where either the funders ask that you cite ChatGPT or any AI writing technology if it was used, or just completely discourage the use of it. And you can easily tell, right? Like if when you're looking at the prompts, the narratives that come out that are supported by that, by the technology, you can just, it's like this felt sense when a human is writing it versus when a non-human is sort of like putting it together. So maybe what can be done for those, for the funders that are allowing it, but just ask you to cite it, is start with ChatGPT, get your ideas, so use it as a tool to get your ideas together, kind of an outline, and then just build upon that. So you have like a springboard, so to speak. Yeah, sorry, Zahra.
Yeah, I would highly encourage that because it's so often exactly when someone hasn't written something. So like even if you are, I would I use it to bounce, like, I'm like, okay, I have these like scrambled ideas, put them together, and then I will always go in and edit it so that it sounds human and not like AI wrote it. I've heard mixed things from funders about the use of AI. We are developing our own AI LOI writer so that nonprofits can, like, if they filled out their candid profile, the LOI writer is just going to pull the information that they've already shared on their candid profile and create an LOI for them, and then they can customize it. So that's in the works. I don't know how I mean, it was funded by someone, so it was well received by some funders. Other funders are not that excited, so TBD.
All
I know
right.
we're kind of
Well,
on time, but I just want to put one plug in there is that we do need to think about, and maybe this is a whole new other conversation, that nonprofit organizations, whether you have a in-house grant writer or some of the team members, volunteers that are putting the grant application together, it is so essential that whatever proposal that you are developing to share with your funders, it's looked over and people are aware of it. Like your leadership is aware of exactly what is being proposed and what is being said, because there's a very slippery slope where a person just develops it and writes everything and then it's aborted. But you have the leadership that had a general idea, high level idea, but don't know the intricacies that went into it. That can cause a whole host of issues going down. And maybe that's a part two of like compliance and all the other fun stuff.
And I would also add that your programs team should know what you're saying that you're going to do, because so often you get a grant and it's like, you're going to do all these things. And the programs team is like, we didn't sign up to do any of those things, and that's not on our agenda for the year. So I would make sure that you're in communication with leadership and the people on the ground doing the work to make sure that what you're presenting to a funder is accurate.
that almost seems like a part two. What happens when you get the money?
It's an adventure.
I think this deserves a checklist. Like, what's a good, checklist? Make sure who have you shared because we work in silos, I'm not sure what grants are out there that we're responsible for oftentimes, right? So yeah, it should be part of the grant writing cycle. Share what you're doing, get the feedback from your internal team before you actually submit it to an external source, right? You think that's obvious, but this is why surgeons have checklists too, because we all get into our thing and we're in our own space and oftentimes don't, forget the most important pieces sometimes. So, so thank you. That's a
Thank you so
very good
much.
takeaway.
Appreciate all the insights and wisdom, and thank you to all the attendees for joining. We'll be sending out the recording, so those people who did not register, they will still get it. Zahra and Madiha, if you think of any other resources you think we should, or if you happen to have like that wonderful checklist, like Shazeen mentioned, like what you should do before you submit your grant application, that might be helpful. If not, once this is uploaded, I'll be sending out next couple of days or perhaps after I eat. We'll see how things go. But again, thank you everybody who's joining. I did put a link in the chat for the survey, so kindly fill it out. We love feedback and try to adjust accordingly. And next year we will try not to have it on the day after Laylatul Qadr and the last few days of Ramadan. Not ideal, but so thank you so much. We appreciate it. I will stop recording and thank you.
Thank you so much.